Marcus Rogan and Omar Pinzon, two great Olympians, amazing talents, training for London 2012. Notice here we're focusing on warming up the shoulder, keeping the spine in a very strong position. One of the tools in our arsenal we utilize is called the AB-Inforcer Core Biofeedback Trainer. On it, you can do all sorts of strength and conditioning segments, focusing on the precision of this entire spine, including the head-neck position. Notice here the hip flexors are normally the dominant movement, except notice that the low back and the head are not moving at all. This kind of a butterfly stroke, training the core, notice the lights are on in the piece, so the athlete is getting biofeedback from the lights at the same time that they're focusing on the belt line being braced and quiet the entire time. We call this distal speed. Distal speed means speed of hands and speed of feet. This butterfly stroke in the water becomes extremely powerful and will take seconds off of your strokes. This here, focusing on the entire spine being stable, we call this a lights on, head quiet position. Notice Omar Pinzon here, fully going full out, working his lats, keeping his lights on, and driving the hips so that the low back is not being displaced by those very powerful hip flexors and legs. This next movement, we take what we just learned using the AB-Inforcer as a tool and load up the midsection on the lights on zone, or the lumbosacral region, or the hip region, right where your belt line is at. The shoulders are supported on a foam pad and the feet are suspended in a TRX system. What happens here is that the athlete is going up and down with resistance on their hips. We're focusing on what we call the neutral zone of that pelvic thrust. So in a butterfly stroke, or many of the strokes in swimming, where the hip actually has to move, you want to make sure that the glute, in combination with the entire length of the spine, are very strong and stable, extending, but never hyperextending. Now we load one plate, and then two plates very carefully onto the athlete's midsection, avoiding the rib cage and making sure that the primary weight is suspended right on top of the athlete's belt line. The umbilicus is right in the middle of that, or the belly button is right in the center of that. So L3, the thoracolumbar fascial area, or the low back area that's supposed to be bracing, kicks up. Now we call this a strip set. We get to a point where the form starts getting out of control, lose a weight. You keep going until the form starts going, or the head starts moving excessively, or the lights shut off, the proverbial lights, and then you flip off the last plate. You want to go until you can't hold form anymore. Remember, practice makes not perfect, but permanent. Practice makes permanent. We're focusing on fixing those 3 points, quiet head and 2 quiet points bilaterally at L3, which is right where my hands are on that athlete's back. Closing the midline on my right hand, squeezing through the lights on zone, the thoracolumbar fascial area with my left. Notice full extension by the great athlete Marcus Rogan, focusing on the glide segment. Omar does a great job. It's a little bit shorter, but this, if you have a bad shoulder, or if you're nursing any injury, make sure you check with your professional coaches prior to adding any of these exercises into your routine. As you feel more confident and that you own the form, you can actually add a degree or two to the movement of the shoulder. Make sure your lats, your lights, and the glutes stay on. Full extension, full finish through the wall, full drive, focusing on the spine. It's almost what they call a spinal buttressing. There's no breakdown of the center. The entire length of the spine focuses. The lats support the shoulder, going out into full extension, while the lats, lights, and glute area are on. Notice my hands are cueing that same light cueing. The lats are in my hand. This is what we call a stir the pot movement. Wax on, wax off. You want to make sure again, lights, lats, glutes. The AB-Inforcer is a great biofeedback device that helps us neurologically turn on the spine stability muscles so that you can do some of these more advanced movements. Don't do these until you're sure there's a high degree of precision in your workout. Notice the hip starts wanting to undulate up and down. Notice I add a little bit more tension in on the oblique area. You really want to make sure that those arms can kick while the hips don't break down. These athletes are absolutely phenomenal at duplicating a great spine angle. This spine angle, they're telling me, is translating into speed in the water. Hydroplaning and aerodynamics and water dynamics are just very simply duplicatable great spine angles that can lead to precision in the water. Focus on the right muscle groups, focus on the right form. Form will follow the function. You make sure that you train and load properly in the gym and do not replicate a mechanism of injury. Always focus on beautiful, amazing form. Once the form is distorted, get out of the movement. You notice here Omar is fatiguing. I slowed him down. He's just holding on and working on that endurance protocol right through his lights on zone at his belt line. This is a very exciting move that we love teaching, where you try to separate church from state. Separate the function of what the leg is doing from what the upper body is doing. Find a way to turn on your lats. Full extension, full glide position. Off the wall, an athlete that's a swimmer needs to be able to find this tall extension. Notice the belt line is very quiet. I now come in and try to perturb the situation by adding in a little perturbation to the sides of the athlete, simulating waves from the competitor that might try to actually knock them out of focus. Notice the legs are taking the brunt of this. While the lights stay on, the lats are on, and the athlete strives to maintain a tall, neutral position. Marcus Rogan is about 6'5". His hands extend to the ceiling well over 7 feet. It's an amazingly genetically gifted athlete. Focusing on this kind of length and stiffness to the entire length of the spine has given him an unbelievable sensation of strength, power, and planed out hydroplaning, we like to call it, in the water. Staying focused on balance right through the length of the entire spine, immovable eyes, ideally an immovable belt line. Remember, swimming includes short axis and long axis movements. Spinal stiffening is only one very small component to training. We're only showcasing here a couple of very exciting things we wanted to share with you that we believe would be great additions to your training protocol. Again, check with your strength coaching professional prior to doing any of these movements on your own. Make sure that you're focusing on form first and then add resistance later. Remember, practice makes permanent, and that's exactly what you want to do. Are you great once? Can you duplicate your greatness? Ideally, great athletes always focus on form and a high degree of intensity. We always wrap up maintaining a stretch on the AB-Inforcer, so you're able to set up in a corner with your feet up a wall with the athletes. You're able to actually maintain these soft contoured curves, maintaining your neutral curves in the spine. Even at 6'5", from 4'11" all the way up over 6 foot, we're able to accommodate many different athletes. Maintaining neutral lines. Notice I tie the feet together. We're focusing on a little bit of the hamstring length. His hamstrings are only up there at about 65 to 70 degrees above parallel. This is not an excessive hamstring stretch. All we're trying to do is just gently open up the hamstring and separate it so the lumbar spine can go into controlled curve the spine down, or what they call lumbar extension. Now we're stretching the pecs a little bit, trying to open up that chest, making sure that the shoulders and the pecs are not collapsing the system. These are some great stretches to cool down with at the end of any workout. Also working on that IT band, trying to make sure that the quad dominance is taken down. The AB-Inforcer is an unbelievable tool in our arsenal that we use to duplicate great spine angles. We use it as a great stretching protocol. We also utilize it as a great biofeedback device because it allows the athlete and myself to see if there's rotation.